Digital fraud. I'm sure many people have heard of those stories of people being robbed through fraud. And that's a very key word every time uh, fraud incidents happen. So join me in welcoming Raphael Olowo, who has an experience of over 10 years in value for money forensics and information systems audit, with an expertise in e-government systems, digital transformation, fraud investigation, and prevention policy and strategy. He has participated in numerous collaborative, anti-corruption, fraud investigation, and he has also been a technical advisor for forensics and the IS audits. And Uganda State's House Anti-Corruption and Health Monitoring Unit. Currently, he also is the certification director for CISA and Isaka Kampala chapter. He's also a visiting adjunct lecturer at ISAMI Kampala and has also testified as an expert witness at the Uganda Anti-Corruption Court of Law. Currently, he's pursuing his information security and digital forensics. Is it a master's? Yeah, master's from the University of East London, UK. So, Raphael, good evening.
Evening, Raphael. Welcome to the show, to the podcast, rather.
Good evening, Josephine, Deo, and the other colleague, Angella.
Yes, good evening.
So, Raphael, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Deo and your team, for hosting me in this very exciting podcast. I wear so many hats, but like you said, I've worked in the sector of education as my first job when I was still at the university. And I was doing IT and computing. My first job was a computer instructor. And then when I finished the university, I moved on to work in the bank. I was not doing IT per se, but I was in the sales and marketing role. Then I moved from there and joined the public sector, where I practiced forensics, IS audits, and value for money audits for the last over 10 years. So I also do consulting work, and I teach at the university. Yeah, I'm also married. I'm a father, a family person. I also serve on the Isaka board since 2021 as a certification director. So that is about me. I'm so passionate about information security and fraud investigation and anti-corruption. So I hope that this podcast could help to shed more light on those things to make our country better and much better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raphael, for that introduction. It's nice to know that you're a wholesome person. In your experience, how is fraud perpetrated today, and what are the emerging schemes?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. The way fraud is being perpetrated today has changed, but has also not changed. Why do I say this? We have the traditional frauds or the crimes like theft of money, robbery, corruption. Those are still being perpetrated today. But also, because of the emergence of technology, we've had what we call the cyber-dependent crimes. These are crimes that cannot happen unless there's technology and the internet which facilitates it and makes it be able to happen. So without technology and the internet, these frauds would not happen. An example of them is the phishing attacks or the ransomware attacks. Those are cyber crimes. Of course, the phishing attacks, you can be conned of your money. Someone send you an email and promise you things, but when you fall for it, then he's able to defraud you. So those are the cyber dependent. They wouldn't actually exist unless the internet was there. But then also the traditional frauds or the crimes are what we call they are cyber enabled. They were there before, but now technology has made them to be able to reach a higher geographical area, because the internet itself is a cyberspace that can span many countries and jurisdictions. An example of them is the online fraud or electronic fraud. So these are now being enabled by the cyberspace, but they were there originally in other forms, in their traditional forms. So that's what we are seeing now happening. And maybe also from our SACA conference, which has just concluded, the 13th Information Security ISACA conference. One of the emerging frauds that came about was the fact that fraudsters now are stealing money, of course using online fraud, but to avoid recovery of these monies, they are converting them into cryptocurrency. So this is something that is new. It has not been happening over maybe the last 5 years, but it's something that is emerging. And this is, of course, posing a challenge to prosecutors in the courts of law, because we don't have a law for cryptocurrency in the country. So once these proceeds of crime are converted into cryptocurrency, it becomes very hard for the government and even the investigators to recover money. So if to give it context in Uganda, that is something that is emerging, and the listeners have to pay attention to it, and even those in the fintech industry and banking. So maybe briefly, that's what I can say.
Okay.
Thank you, Raphael, for that answer. So I think there's a lot of fraud which is being perpetrated using technology. So what are the key challenges then associated with the real-time detection of fraud, and how are these challenges being tackled, whether from the industry or from your experience?
Yeah, real-time detection of fraud is still a big challenge, because our digital economy hasn't yet been able to grow to the level where we would want it. But the main challenge that is posed by that is there's a lot of data, huge volumes of data that now is involved in transactions. Just imagine how many millions of transactions every day occur in the mobile money space itself. So because of the large volume of information, detecting fraud in real time becomes difficult unless you can deploy highly advanced data analytic systems, but which also are quite expensive, especially for the SMEs. So that is the big challenge.
And thank you. And in your experience, how are you detecting fraud, whether real time or not? Are there specific tools you use, or what methods do you use? And if you can tell us, if it's highly confidential, it's also okay.
Yeah, okay. What I can say is that maybe from the government side, public sector where I practice, we have some core e-government systems which government uses to transact business. They've managed to implement what we call continuous monitoring systems. For example, like on our Oracle system for government, that's the IFMIS. We have what we call a database vault. This system is able to monitor the activities of the users who transact business on the government integrated financial management system, and also it monitors the activities of super users. So these suspicious transactions, if any, the system is able to monitor that behavior, because user behavior is one of those things that you look out for as an indicator of potential fraud. Yeah, so that is from the government side, what they've been able to do. But largely from the public sector side, continuous monitoring as an aspect of continuous detection of fraud hasn't been fully adopted, and there's still some work to do in the public sector space. So that is the little that I can share. However, of course, the government has other systems. For example, the government operates what we call a SAT. There's one operated by NITA, Uganda, and the other one is operated by UCC.
So for those who don't know what a SAT is, could you explain that?
That means a Computer Emergency Response Team. It's
Mm.
a facility that helps to monitor cyber threats. So the government runs two of them, one with UCC and one with NITA, Uganda. So those systems are also able to monitor. They do cyber threat analysis, whereby they can be able to detect whether is there a potential ransomware attack, is there a potential denial of service attack on the cyberspace of the country. Okay, this is technology that government has put in place to manage, and actually, our country has one of the most safe cyberspace if you compare with other countries in the region and even in the continent. We rank so highly in terms of our cyberspace being somehow secure. Yeah, so this is what government has been able to do. But of course, it does not mean that when you deploy this system, then you are out. Then you're safe, because the threats are there. Yeah, so that's what I can share in terms of that monitoring. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Raphael.
So when it comes to money laundering, I'm sure you've gone through several cases concerning this. How does this actually happen?
Thank you for that question. Okay, the legal framework for money laundering, anti-money laundering in the country is governed by the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2013. Money laundering is a scheme whereby the fraudster benefits from proceeds of crime or economic crime, and the intention is to conceal the source of this money. So what happens that after they've benefited from the proceeds of crime, it could be a kickback, or it could be a sale of drugs, illicit drugs, or it could be transacting maybe in illicit currencies. You've heard of fake money, or even sale of timber. Maybe they don't have a license, or even actual theft and robbery of money. So after they benefit from a proceed of crime, they will want to conceal the source of these funds. So they will begin by placing it into the financial system. And after they've done so, they will begin to split it up into small chunks to avoid being detected. Then after some time, they integrate it back into one source. So that now it looks like this is normal money that came out of what? Business transactions. So in a nutshell, this is how money laundering occurs. It starts with the placement of proceeds of crime into the financial system, and the next step is to layer these funds. If it was 100 million, for example, it can be split into small chunks of maybe 2 million and taken to different bank accounts or mobile money. Then at some point, they'll integrate it back into one source or two sources. So that now it looks like this is legitimate money, which has been produced over the ordinary course of business. And the businesses that are prone to money laundering, for example, is the businesses that have a lot of high volume transactions, fast moving consumer goods. Like I'm operating a wholesale shop. I buy and sell goods. I'm operating a forex bureau. operating maybe a timber, I sell timber, or I sell car spare parts, or even I run a restaurant. There are high volumes of transactions and numerous. So usually fraudsters would love to use such kind of businesses. That's why in the bank, when you are opening an account, let's say for a business, if this business is dealing in such types of goods that I've mentioned, the financial institutions usually give a higher level of approval because they know that such businesses are associated with money laundering. And this is standard for all banks. You're running a timber, car spare parts, forex bureaus, the mandate approval for such would ordinarily be higher than just maybe at a branch level, because it is easy for somebody to use that business to clean up their money. Thank you so much.
Angela, I feel you can expand more on this question.
Oh, well, how do you
Mhm.
feel that?
I feel like
Am I
this is
well
where usually
conversant
that is where you usually come
in
in and you be
money
like,
laundering? Oh yes, because most of the things I know about money laundering I've seen in movies, like people shifting money to offshore accounts, but then also that layering of breaking it down into seemingly legitimate sums that won't be flagged. Maybe I'll just want Raphael to expound more on how systems we have in Uganda are able to flag. I know we have the Financial Intelligence Association, is that FIA? What exactly do they base on? Authority. So what do they base on? Because it could be a legitimate to 2 million that I'm depositing. What do they base on to actually detect fraud? Because sometimes you would find people frustrated, they've flagged my money in the bank, but they have no actual reason until like you have to prove what is it, what's the framework that they use to flag the fraud in banks in Uganda?
Okay, thank you. The framework for anti-money laundering, like I said, we have the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2013. When you read that law, it defines the crime of money laundering. The definition is there in that law. But also the central banks, which is the regulator of the commercial banks and financial institutions in the country, operates under what we call the Basel Principles of banking. Under these Basel Principles, central banks are required to put in place certain measures that prevent money laundering. For example, one of them is to require the banks that they regulate to report suspicious transactions. And the key word here is, if a transaction is suspected to be a money laundering scheme, it becomes a suspicious transaction. For example, somebody opens an account today, and in the next day, they deposit 500 million shillings. And the next day, they deposit 200 million out of nowhere. And as they deposit, they keep withdrawing it and depositing it. Now that becomes suspicious. And so the banks that are regulated by the central bank, the Bank of Uganda, they have a duty to flag such a transaction and report it to the Financial Intelligence Authority, which is the implementer of the the Anti-Money Laundering Act and its regulations. Yeah, so there's a principle of duty of care on the part of the banks. And also there's also a duty of fiduciary duty, whereby if you are employed by the bank and you see that the transaction is suspicious, you have to report it. The banks have also employed systems that monitor user behavior. Of course, now with the advent of AI, we are seeing the growth of systems that can analyze behavioral patterns of user accounts. And the banks, even within this country, I know that they have this capability to monitor user accounts to see if there's a normal trend of a user's account and deviate from the normal. the bank ordinarily would call you and ask, why has there been a change in your account? Because every customer has a particular volume of transaction, or there's a particular pattern of the way they conduct their account. But if there's a change of pattern of the behavior on how this account is being used, that is suspicious. And ordinarily the banks would want to look at that. And if they confirm that indeed there's something wrong, then they have the duty to report to the FIA about this.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
also, you talked about the Anti-Money Laundering Act. I know for sure it does not have cryptocurrency. What steps are the regulators taking into maybe increasing the traceability of cryptocurrency and also monitoring its use? Because I know people are moving towards use of cryptocurrency because they're just tired of maybe the traditional systems of money transfer and inconvenience and exchange rates, forex rates. How are the regulators handling the legalization of cryptocurrency?
Yeah, ordinarily, the institution which has the mandate to create a law to regulate cryptocurrency is the central bank, because from the Financial Institutions Act, as amended, the Bank of Uganda has that mandate to control the currency in the country and also price. So that mandate lies with them. If you recall, in our just concluded Information Security Conference by FACA, we had a representative of the Uganda Bankers Association. If you recall, the aspect of creating a law to regulate cryptocurrency is an ongoing conversation between the Uganda Bankers Association with the stakeholders. And I believe that the government and the central bank in the foreseeable future will put in place mechanisms and even legislation to manage the cryptocurrency. Because as I said earlier, under the Anti-Corruption Act of 2009 and also the Penal Code and even the Computer Misuse Act, usually these are the legal framework under which we prosecute most of the fraud that happens in the country. So if you look at the Computer Misuse Act, it does not define cryptocurrency there. If you look at the Anti-Corruption Act of 2009, there is no cryptocurrency. So as an enhancement to the laws of the country, I see that in the foreseeable future, the government will include this. And already there's an ongoing conversation. So this is something that they have taken note of. And we pray that can be done as soon as possible.
Yes, because the world is moving fast.
Yes.
Yeah, but of course, presently it's not recognized within Uganda. I wanted to just supplement on the Anti-Money Laundering Act. And of course, speaking in my experience as on board of a bank, I think we have to conduct customer due diligence when you onboard a customer. So typically, when a customer comes to you, you expect to know the work they do, etc. So if suddenly, as Raphael says, they start depositing money that is way above their income, then the source of funds become questionable. If they receive money, say they claim to be a gold importer, but they don't have a license, then that becomes things that you have to flag. And we also take care very much of identifying, tracking the politically exposed people, because they're considered high risk. So we do, their transactions are monitored closely because of their high risk. So it's really flagging suspicious transactions, high risk transactions, and of course the source of the money is also, especially if the money is coming from abroad and it's from some grey listed countries, then there is a duty to flag the suspicious transactions and to report to those transactions to the FIA. It's a real. I think banks the high risk in terms of, because they handle money and because they handle high volumes of transactions, high value transactions. So typically, they are high-risk institutions which have to manage the AML and counterterrorism financing as well. They have to make sure that that's not happening in their institutions. So yeah, I just wanted to supplement that. We wanted to also find out from you, Raphael. There's this issue of synthetic identity fraud, explain how that is operating and why it's becoming increasingly prevalent.
Okay, thank you for that, Josephine. Synthetic fraud per se is a fraud scheme whereby the fraudster will pick an identity of a person like me, and then he uses another fake identity and merges the two to form what you describe as the synthetic identity, a cosmetic identity. Then now he uses that new identity to perpetrate a fraud. He can, for example, use that identity to acquire a SIM card. And once he acquires a SIM card, then he will use that SIM card to perpetrate a fraud. He can use it to make calls to people, or he can even use it when he's applying for a facility. When they ask him to present his known mobile phone number, let's say if he's opening up a bank account, they will ask him to present his phone numbers. So he will present those phone numbers that are registered with that fake identity that he used to acquire the SIM card. And once he perpetrates the fraud, he definitely gets rid of that identity. In the developed economies, it's usually common with credit card theft. And you'll ask me, how do the fraudsters acquire this identity of the person? Of course, to give an example, there are many ways they can do it. One of the ways they can do it is through the phishing attacks, where they can deceive you to reveal your personal information, maybe your credit card and social security numbers and the like, through the phishing attacks. What I have described earlier as the cyber-dependent crimes. Phishing attack is an example. A phishing scam email is an example of that. The other way they can do it, and which of course we've seen from the cyber experience, is through what they call data breaches. Data breaches happens when there's unauthorized access into a computer system, and the credentials of the users of that system can be compromised. And if that system stores personal data, then the perpetrator or the fraudster will have access to this personal information, which now he can use to create the synthetic identity. Then I take an example. There are some two well-known data breaches in the space of information security. There are quite many, but the two that are notable is the eBay data breach of 2014. In this data breach, the fraudsters used the employee credentials that have been compromised, and they accessed the computer system of eBay and exposed personal data of 149 million customers of eBay, 145 million. And usually what they'll do, they'll go and dump these credentials in the dark web, where now people will have personal information about people. So this personal information now can be used together with other fake identities to create what? Synthetic identities. The other notable data breach in the information security space was the Marriott. Marriott is a chain of hotels. 2020, we had over 5 million guests' personal information being compromised, where the fraudsters used employee credentials of that hotel. They picked these credentials and used it to access the system and exposed personal information for 55 million guests. So such personal data, if now in the access of the fraudster, they can now be used to create a synthetic what? Identity. So this is just in the context of computer security and data privacy. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Sorry, if I can just ask, in your experience, we know the getting a SIM card nowadays is quite, you have to have a national
Yes.
identity card. That identity card, most MNOs are able to verify national identity cards directly with NIRA, as do banks. In your experience, how do they get away from? Are they able to create these identities and bypass some of those controls, especially with mobile companies, or telco companies, or financial institutions? How has your experience been, where they've been able to create these fake identities?
Well, from my personal experience, maybe I could speak to the fact that insider threats are still the most critical threats that institutions have to pay attention to. Actually, even in the information security context, the human frontier, who is the person, the individual, is still the weakest point. When you look at all incidents of fraud world over, if you look at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners report of 2024, it speaks to the fact that insider threats, employee thefts, employee fraud still is the most prevalent. It means that the employees within the institutions themselves are the ones that are mostly perpetrating this fraud. And when you read that the SCFE report of 2024, it still ranks employees to be what? The highest, committing more than 70% of the fraud, or at least being involved. So from my experience, even here within the country, you will get a call from a fraudster. He calls you if he says you have 2 million on your account. So you wonder how he knows you have 2 million, and then he calls you. Probably there's somebody. If I'm to develop my fraud theory, or what we call hypothesis in fraud investigation, I would hypothesize that it is an insider within the telco company who is dealing with this fraudster. They will give them information that, look, this guy has deposited 2 million on his account, and probably it has been redundant there for what? A week or two. Immediately you get an early morning call of this fraudster trying to con you to press certain codes. But actually, when you look at the phone number they're using, you find it's registered in the name of maybe a person, maybe a lady, and the person calling was a gentleman. So it means that even in the process of doing KYC for SIM cards, the internal weaknesses within the telco companies that still need to be addressed. So I would hypothesize that that is one of the ways in which they are able to get away with this. The insider threats are still real and requires institutions to do a lot in curbing this virus from within.
Thank you for that. Our previous guest said that watchman that you employ to open that door, to close that door, will be the same one to open it. So, maybe companies will need to look into integrity. But also integrity, you can't measure it. You can't you can't know, but just looking at a person, just fostering that culture of integrity. Maybe that's something people should look into also.
I think there's also this conversation, which I think one of the conferences we had some time back, where they were talking about where they have mules. Basically, what happens is someone gives you money, you go and open for them an account, they give you your final cut, then the rest is history. Then they start doing fraud using your account. You don't know the person. Are those incidents also there popular in this country?
Well, I could only say that from the mobile money fintech space, it is common, and even from within your own site, you find somebody is using a phone that is not registered in their names, the SIM card. When you ask him, "I'm sending you money," you assume the SIM card is in their names. They say, "Oh, no. This SIM card, I went to a lady who does the SIM card, and she registered for me this SIM card in her name or in his names." So it means that there's a sale of SIM cards. There's a sale of SIM cards that are not registered in the actual identity of people. So this is one of the gaps that need to be addressed. Hypothetically, in the financial institution space, it used to be there, but now with the integration of NIRA with the banks, that risk has been reduced a bit, but also inherently, if I'm saying inherently, the risk that is inherent with the registration of what? Of national IDs is that when you're registering for national ID, there is no process per se or the rigor that would ultimately rule out any sort of false presentation of identity. Because I could show up and say that I am from this place, and this is when I was born, and this is my name. And all I need to do, I can walk to a sub-country and get a short birth certificate, which is actually not my real names. Then I can use it to get a national ID. So inherently, I have given a false what? Name. And this is common, where you find the person's national ID is different from their employment data. The names they're using at work is different from the ones on their national ID. So the information asymmetry for our developing economy still presents that challenge. We will not reach at a point whereby we can be able to track somebody's birth from the point when they are born. We assign them a particular ID and we use it to track. We're still a bit a long way, but with the government digital transformation strategy that was recently launched by the Ministry of ICT last year, these are some of the things that government wants to do to be able to manage the information asymmetry and develop a better digital economy for the country.
That's much needed. And you talked about financial institutions deploying huge data analytics systems. And I would also say maybe deep learning and machine learning systems to monitor behavior, customer behavior. But then, with machine learning models, you get so many false positives, and then, you get a false positive, someone's transaction is flagged. I would want to know what is being done to improve on that to reduce customer friction and also indicating suspicious transactions.
Yeah, thank you for that. Technology, of course, the more you deploy technology, the more you automate. Your intention is to improve customer experience. But my take is that the AI behavior analysis systems should not 100% replace the human intervention. There are still those transactions where the human intervention is required, where it requires you to make judgment, personal judgment, based on experience, and also based on intuition, and also based from your logical reasoning of things. So, in as much as we are seeing an appetite from financial institutions to employ such systems that monitor user behaviors, the human aspect should also not be ruled out. I believe that human beings should continue to be part of this ecosystem. When we do that, then we shall be able to manage some of these risks that instead of enhancing user customer experience, are instead affecting them. Like you've spoken about the false positives. The human intervention still needs to be integrated in these mechanisms to detect abnormal, unusual behavior.
Thank you for that. So as you're winding down, you've already talked about some of the ways of identifying fraud and how to mitigate it. But could you expand more on that? The strategies which are more effective in identifying fraud.
Yeah, thank you so much. The proven strategies, if I could refer you to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners report of 2024, for example, it says that, at least from the survey that they did, the tips are still the most effective ways of detecting fraud. Tips. This tip can be from a fellow colleague at work, can be from a vendor who says, I'm being asked for a bribe by your staff. It can be from a customer who says, no, I'm being coerced. I'm trying to process a loan from a bank, for example, and the loan officer is telling me I need to pay him maybe 1 million, or at least I need to guarantee that he gets 5% of the loan disbursement. So these tips from the space of fraud investigation and detection are still the most effective in detecting fraud, because organizations are people, they're not systems. When we say a financial institution X, we don't mean the systems or the money it holds in its vaults. It is the people. So human beings are the most important assets in every institution. And if they're reported fraud, it will be the human being. So these tips have proved to be the most successful. Number two, internal controls that are working proved to be the second most effective in terms of mitigating or detecting fraud. So then also the whistleblowing programs, okay? These are also very effective, because if there's a mechanism internally to whistleblow or to report suspicious activity, then the tips would be either reported in confidence to a higher level manager, and also it could be reported through the whistleblower protection schemes, which of course has to guarantee that the employees who speak up are protected. And in Uganda, we have the Whistleblowers Protection Act of 2010, which gives a framework under which institutions can build a whistleblower protection program for their staff. The financial institutions are already doing this, and there's a lot of tip-offs within the institutions. Even when you read the SCFA report of 2024, most of the frauds are being perpetrated by employees, but also we are seeing an increase of frauds being perpetrated by people in management, because people in management have the positions of power and authority, and they can make decisions. And such frauds perpetrated by people in management tend to have high value, high impact transactions, because some of them are stewards of financial resources, or at least can direct how it is used. The impact of the fraud involving management is usually of very high impact and has severe economic impact to the institution. The ones of normal employees are more prevalent, but they have a lesser impact in terms of money value. So institutions have to pay attention to oversight of management, and I think that's why the board exists in many institutions, to have those checks and balances. And in the context of financial institutions, from my experience, we see a lot of bogus loans approved by those in management, of course in collusion with the customers, who can present fake titles. Some of them can present titles that purport to be from a particular location, but yet the actual location is not what it says. Sometimes we see those in management, of course, they have a duty of care and fiduciary duty. You see them failing on this. Either they are negligent or they have the criminal intent, whereby they perhaps would not do a proper business valuation of a client. We see sometimes the cash flows may not be properly reviewed, maybe by the loan appraisal teams, when they're doing institutional appraisal of maybe loans. And so this involvement of management in such frauds usually has high impacts. And from my experience in the financial institutions, the loan frauds usually have to have somebody in at least an position of management. So there needs to be oversight in that aspect.
Okay, when they will read your profile, there's a point that said that you testified in anti-corruption court. In anti-corruption court. So when you keep on saying employees are the weakest link employees, I know that you've seen firsthand and that you had to actually testify against someone. No? So you sometimes fear for your life.
All right. In terms of personal security, person as an investigator, the personal security is very important. And one of the ways you can invest in it is to invest in people, because people are the most important aspect of anything. It means that, like, where you stay or even where you work, make sure that your friends are not only your peers on the same level or in the same office. The man who makes shoes outside your office, sitting on the street there, or the one who sells anything, or even the boda guy, he can be the one that will save you, or even the cleaner. So let's befriend these people. And this is even how you can get tips. That means if you're at a very high level in an institution, invest in people at all levels. Befriend people at all levels. Because if somebody wanted to take you out, the easiest person he can use probably is the person who cleans your office. But if you are good to this person and you treat them like a human being, then that threat will be somehow reduced. Your house girls at home, do you share dining with them? Or you think they are second-grade citizens who have to eat alone? What if they poison your food? Do you pay them well? Do you treat them well? When they fall sick, do you tell them to use their money to treat themselves, or you actually can give a hand if you can? Around the place where you stay, there are those women who sell charcoal, who sell sumbusa, who are running small kiosks. When you're driving back from your home every day, do you come at full speed and leave the dust behind them? Or you'll take a moment to wave at them, say, hey, Mlimtia, how are you doing? So that people within your community, they get to know that you are a human being. Now, these are the people who can easily save you in case there's a problem. In case somebody wanted to take you out, you'll be like, hey, but we know this lady or this gentleman, he's a good person. But the moment you close yourself out from your home to your gate in your nice car you drive out, and the community where you live, people do not know who you are, you'd never take a moment to move out and sit with them and talk to them, then you are living dangerously. So I think it is a call for all of us to get back to our basics and try to treat people and relate with people at all levels. So if you're in this job, this is how you're supposed to relate with people. People should look at you as a normal person, and they should have confidence to approach you and give you information that can save your life. This is the tip I could give to
Aspiring.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Raphael.
Yeah, thank you. I know you touched a little bit on things like whistleblowing and all that. But is there, as we wind up, is there any data which you think is crucial to developing a robust fraud prevention program, and also, what are the other things? What is the final words of advice that you have for our listeners?
Yeah, thank you so much. When you to develop a fraud prevention program, as an institution, you have some data, which of course you have generated historically from your business transactions. So at all levels, you must be able to do a fraud risk assessment of all your business units and see what sort of data they produce. Then you have to go back and look at the patterns of this data. And also you have to understand what is the data life cycle within my institution. Do I generate data oftenly, or there's some data that I generate and does not change over time, which is a bit permanent? So when you understand the type of data that you process, and you understand the patterns in those data and the users and the consumers, then you're able to build that prevention program. That's what I can say. It requires understanding of the data life cycle. And it means that you'll have to maybe use experts or hire people who understand data, and also work with all department heads or the business owners. They should be able to own up their data. So the aspect of data ownership is very important. Being able to define who is the owner of this data, who can verify that this data is theirs, Because even when you go to, let's say, like a court of law, for example, the courts would want you to determine the owner of that data, the competent authority, where to use the legal language. If it is land transactions, the competent authority on land registration is the Commissioner of Land Registration. And that is defined in the Registration of Titles Act. So if you take such data in court, then you'll have to show that it's coming from the competent authority. So even internally, you must know who are the data owners of all the business functions, and what is the data life cycle of the data that they are keeping. What is the interrelation between the data from different organizational units? And in what format is this data stored? Is it encrypted or it's not? If I'm take you back to the eBay data breach of 2014, one of the issues that came out and the lessons that were learned from that incident was that the personal data was not encrypted. And so once the fraudsters were able to compromise the login credentials of an employee and they got into the system of eBay, they found data that was not encrypted. And this is one of the things that led to this data breach being one of the most notable incidents in the information security history. So to wrap it up, we must know that data is now the most important. After people. People first, then data is number 2. Then the rest can follow.
Thank you for that, Raphael. Definitely. When it comes to this conversation, people who are going to enjoy it mostly is Josephine, because she definitely has got a lot of pointers concerning how fraud actually happens. And I'm sure also Angela picked something, and I'm sure our audience has also got something. So thank you for that great conversation concerning how fraud is actually perpetrated. So with that being said, if the ladies have nothing to say, I would like to wrap up.
I don't know whether Raphael has some final parting shots or words of advice for our listeners before we wrap up.
Yeah, the final thoughts I would probably send out to the information security specialists and also those who are in the fraud prevention, detection job function, and even the risk specialists and auditors, is that cybercrime is continuously evolving, and so it requires us to continuously to do CPDs and update ourselves continuously. Continuous professional education. At ISACA, we offer a lot of certifications in the area of information security, risk, audit, and even we have our annual conference on information security, which hosts people from all over the world, all over the region, and where you meet the best tech brains in the country. We converge every year to come and update ourselves on what's happening in the digital space. So I encourage us to attend those conferences and also find other avenues where we can continuously learn and update ourselves, because every day is a learning process. And according to Darwin, when you stop learning, you die. So we must continuously learn or accept to unlearn and learn and learn and relearn. Thank you so much.
Angela, do you have any final thoughts?
So to me, I would also think it's important to stress the use of multi-factor authentication in all applications, because that's the beginning of all frauds. If you implement multi-factor, you eliminated to a great extent identity theft, and that will decrease the risk of any transactional frauds that you have to deal with in your organization. That's all.
Josephine?
Nothing up further from me. I think you are going to wrap us up.
The episode we could recommend.
Let's have previous one by Stephen Mwesege. That's a nice
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes. So yeah, check it out. Other than that, see you all in the next episode.
Thank you, Raphael. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Raphael.